So greetings to all. Good morning, everyone. So today is another day to discuss one of the topics of our subject, life with results. So we're gonna have a new discussion for today. So before we proceed and tackle our discussion, allow me to introduce myself first. I am Aliana May Brian from BS and Social Studies 1C Day, and today we're going to discuss one of the writings of Jose Rizal. Know that there are four other writings of Jose Rizal, and I am tasked and to discuss one of it. So, for today's discussion, we're gonna talk about the poem of Jose Rizal, our very own national hero. So all of you are familiar. Who is Jose Rizal? So our poem is entitled Through Education Our Motherland Receives Light, or it may be Education Give Luster to Motherland. So these two are just the same. Okay. So by any chance, are you familiar with this poem? Well, I guess some of you may already encounter this poem, or some of you haven't recognized and heard it before. So you don't have to worry, because we are here to tackle and discuss what is this poem all about. Why did Rizal wrote this poem about, and what is the message of this poem? Okay, so before we proceed to our discussion, let me present to you our learning objectives. So here's our learning objectives, and students are expected to analyze the importance of education in the country, examine the poem of Jose Rizal, which is entitled Through Education Our Motherland Receives Light. Okay, so without further ado, let's start the discussion. So, education gives luster to motherland, or education, through education our motherland receives light. In Spanish, it is translated into por la educación recibe lustre la patrina. So the 1% in your screen is the Spanish term of through education our motherland receives light. Okay, so it was written in Spanish. So na gi ko na siya kanang gi-translate siya into different into English language, so that ma-understand siya. Okay, so who wrote the poem, which is Por la Educación Recibe Lustre la Patrina, otherwise known as Through Education Our Motherland Receives Light? So the one and only who wrote this poem is no other than our very own national hero. So all of you are familiar. Who's this person, right? Because since elementary up to high school and college, we continuously discuss the life of Jose Rizal. What are his contributions into our country? So Jose P. Rizal was the one who wrote the poem in April 1, 1876, and at the age of 15. Imagine, at such a young age, no, we already knew nga Rizal was really a genius one. He was able to read, to write, and know the different languages. Imagine, diba? 20 plus ka languages ang iyang nahibalan at such a young age. So writing a poem for him was just like an easy as a pie. Okay, so the poem was written during the Spanish government. Okay? This is the time where Rizal na nagdako siya sa ruled by the Spanish government ang Philippines, and we already know kung unsa ang nahitabo ato. It was devastating. It was really brutal because of the system. So let's move. So one of the reason why Jose Rizal wrote the poem is it is inspired by the gains he had through education. Rizal envisioned what education can do to a country if its leadership would be made up of a new breed of educated youth. Diba? Are you familiar with the quote, ang kabataan ang pag-asa ng bayan? For me, I do agree that the new breed of youth are really the hope of the country. Okay? Sila mas maka-generate og ideas ug mas may matabang sa tuang government. And this is why Rizal pushed isuot ni Ampon, because he sees as education nga very important sa usa ka nasod. And ikaw as a person, di ba? Kung ikaw naka-education, mo na imong tanging kayamanan nga dili nimo makawat ug makapanghambog nimo wherever you go. People cannot just say nga you are illiterate, you don't know anything about this, because you don't have education. Pero og naka-education, people will look up to you. Diba? Nga na siya ka-importante. So kung ang country is pamahalaan sa mga kabatanunan, nga naay mga grado ni mga education, would that be nice? Kaya if ang mga kabataan is na education, it would generate more ideas, more they can create contributions nga makamake og impact sa atong community or sa atong country as a whole, di ba? So another one factor why Rizal wrote the poem is Rizal hoped his countrymen to seek knowledge in order to live a life of enlightenment, which would make the country rise to the heights of honor and prestige. Do you agree with the statement? Kaya ako, I do agree with that. I do agree that when an individual possesses knowledge, dili siya ingon nga kanang sarado og utok. Dili siya ingon nga kanang one-sided. Because when you possess an education, you tend to allow your critical thinking mo grow. Di ka mas stuck sa usa lang kayong ana. It allows you to be enlightened, and which would make the country rise to the heights of honor and prestige, and that's really great, di ba? Kay kanang once naka-education, no, ang imong country kay proud. Kay bisag asa ka maabot, bisag asa ka, di ba? Naadjud na. So another one is he pictured beautifully education as the foundation of knowledge which gives endless glory. And I do agree with that. Are you familiar sa katong kuan sa city yung si Kyla, if I'm not mistaken, nga he won sa kanang speech nga competition. He won gid siya among different countries nga ning compete ato kay he is the only Filipino nga nakauwi sa gold medal. And would that be amazing? 'Di ba? Imagine nga dili lang siya garbo para siyang kagalingon, pero garbo pud sa tuang nasod. Kay he represent the Filipino sa katong competition. Dili lang yang kagalingon yang represent, pero ang eskwelahan, ang mga tao sa Pilipinas, and it gives a glory. Di ba? It gives an honor nga. Okay, kanang Pilipinas kay kuan kina siya home of the speaker na siya kay katong mga nakadaog. Diba? It's so nice to hear that compliment. Diba? Kay it would make a country ba nga kanang very known nga kanang mura bito siya kanang dili lang mabasta-basta, dili ka i-degrade, things like that. Okay, so here actually I would like to play a video unta para sa poem, no, kay kanang since we already know naman what are the reasons when did Rizal wrote this kanang poem. I would like also to show to you or to hear to you or to view to you a video of the poem. But unfortunately, dili siya ma-place ako. So I would like read na lang. Okay, so every stanza, I'm going to translate it so that mas ma-understand siya. Why? What ang sali naani din nga poem day? Diba? From the word education. Meron na natin ng mga idea ba nga unsay content niya. But let's dig deeper sa sense sa iyang poem. Okay? So here it is. Through education, our motherland receives life. Wise education, a vital breath, inspires an enchanting virtue. She puts the country in the lofty seat of endless glory, of dazzling glow, and just as a gentle aura's puff, you brighten the perfume flowers you. So education with a wise guiding hand, a benefactress exalts the human band. So what does this first stanza mean? So in the first stanza, Rizal expresses that education is what builds up a country and allows her to rise above the rest in matters of honor and a good name. So he likens a guidance relevant in education to the brilliance of a flower. Okay, if a country receives an education, very humut kay siya sa ubang country, diba? So next stanza, it is man's placid repose and earthly life. To education he dedicates, because of her, art and science are born. Man as from the high mount above, the pure rivulet flows, undulates. So education beyond measure gives the country tranquility secure. From the time of man's birth to the moment of his death, he is constantly engaged in the journey of learning. This can come in the form of a formal education and a structured curriculum. So, bisan pa man nga wala pa kakatungtong sa eskwelahan, you acquire education through your mother, through your parents, through sa imong environment. So, kad pagkabata kayo, you tend to acquire knowledge. So, and in this continued journey, people began to discover and innovate, create, and recreate. giving birth to great discoveries and breathtaking wonders. Rizal likens education to rivulet, a stream, a brook that provides a certain peace as the water endlessly flows. So when you have education, kabantay mo ng mga Filipino are very creative. We are known for that. No, aside from the resilient, hospitable, Filipino is very creative. Okay, kana lang ganing mga nasa lowest sector, oh, they are so brilliant, they are so creative nga, even ang sleeper, mahimo nilag barko. And once you became, and once if ma-nourish na ni mga talent, once napakay knowledge nga ma-generate, it can create an innovative ideas, which can greatly impact ito ang country. So, nga na siya ka-importante. So, third stanza. So, where wise education raises a throne, sprightly youth are invigorated, who with firm stand error they subdue, and with noble ideas are exalted. It breaks immortality's neck, comfortable crime before it is halted. It humbles barbarous nations, and it makes of savages champions. So, knowledge and wisdom enliven and embolden the young. With the swords of education, they are able to identify errors and correct them. Of course, kay you became enlightened when you have education. You dili ka ng one-sided bangunahon na. You became rational. You use your critical thinking. And that's what you distinguish what is right from wrong. You were able to identify, ana. You ask the logic. Ano bitaw? So, they are able to find fault and correct them. When you create mistakes, you tend to correct that fault. They are able to find fault in the seemingly faultless fabric of earthly knowledge and smother it with truth. They are all respected of the ideas they bring to the world. Right, they are well respected. So a good education is an effective remedy to the problem of criminal acts and unlawful pursuits. Even nation, no? A good education is an effective remedy to the problem of criminal acts and unlawful pursuits. Diba? If naaman tayo mga lawmakers possess in higher education. So kanilang mga law nga ilang i-process, it will benefit to us. Okay, they keep us secure, or they put those criminals in prison so that they can create and kanang dili nila mas mulaganap ang crime. So even nations who wish nothing more than to divide, conquer, and control are silenced when they open their ears to the voice of wisdom. Diba? Which stops hatred in its track and promotes the welfare of the people. See, if ako, usa ko ka-edukada nga tao, I have very high knowledge, I have very opinions sa mga existing problems. So if I speak with facts, if I speak with logic, people will listen. No? Even savages turn into champions when they are afforded a good education. So, bisan pag unsa pa kakakuan diha, if you are afforded a good education, then you became champion. Diba? So, unlike the spring that nourishes the plants, the bushes of the meads, she goes on spilling her placid wealth, and with kind of eagerness she constantly feeds the river bank through which she sleeps, and to beautiful nature all she concedes. So whoever procures education, wise until the height of honor may rise. From her lips the waters crystalline gush forth without end of divine virtue. So knowledge is likened to a spring that nourishes everything its water touches. The spring of knowledge is everlasting. There is no end to it. Kadto ba mo na knowledge is limited, but imagination isn't. Though limit ang knowledge nga to ang ma-acquire, di ba? Kaya dili majud tanan ato ang mahibaw-an. For every day, no, naadjud tay ma-acquire nga new information, new ideas, new words atong listan nga diba? Every day natin ma-generate nga new ideas, new words. For example, if naglisod ta, diba? It's like a spring. Continuous lang gihapon, diba? So, let's move to the fifth stanza. Almost there. So, okay. So, and prudent doctrines of her faith, the forces weak of evil subdue, that break apart like the whitish waves that lash upon the motionless shoreline, and to climb the heavenly ways the people do learn with her noble example. So, in the education and enlightenment of the goal, man is to overcome the power of evil, with which in this stanza are likened to the waves that lash upon the shore. Yet when man opens his eyes to the divine revelation and acquires knowledge in matters of the spirit, he is able to defeat the oppression of evil and climb the heavenly ways. So, view, anong dilim sa tanan nga kanang mga naka-acquire sa education is kanang they tend to good deeds. Dili man tanan, di ba? If in fact no kinsa pa ni mga brilliant mga mind, mga genius, they are the one nga maki-exploit or maka-benefit sa mga tao in taon nga kanang wala kayo knowledge into particular kuan. Pero if ikaw as an educate if ikaw is naka-education and you embody the spiritual divine, you tend to make good things. Kaya nimo kalabanon ang oppression, i-oppress nimong evil and climb the heavenly ways, and that's good. When you have education, you should also possess the divine divine kanitong pagsalig sa Ginoo, guide, di ba? Kay sayahan man agikan ang kanang knowledge nga atong nakuan karon through him, di ba? We were able to acquire because of him, because without him we are nothing, di ba? So, sixth stanza, in the wrecked human beings pressed, the living flame of good she lights, the hands of criminal fears she ties, and filled the faithful hearts with delights, which seeks her secrets beneficent, and in the love for the good her breast she incites, and it's the education noble and pure of human life at the bosom sure. So in this stanza, education is likened to a bosom. You know what's bosom? But bosom is related to medicine. So producing medicinal efforts to the many afflictions of the human race, which are generally and singularly rooted in the prosperity for evil. The acquisition of good wisdom enables man to magnify his passion for good and continually shun temptation. So the acquisition of good wisdom enables man to magnify his passion for good. Not all those who are educated are doing good deeds. Not all. But kung ikaw, you have wisdom, it enables to you to magnify his passion for good. So you are aiming for what is good. Good for your country, good for the people you are surrounded with, good for your community. So let's jump to the seventh stanza. And like a rock that rises with pride in the middle of the turbulent waves, when hurricane and fear's notus roar, she disregards their fury and raves, that weary of the horror great, so frightened come be off they stave. Such as one by wise education steered, he holds the country's reins unconquered. So this stanza tends to imply that an educated man does not sway when trials come. He stands firm in the midst of despair. Great horrors cannot frighten him as they do other people. Education provides his country with strong and respectable citizens who are ready to fight for her honor no matter the lost. And this stanza would be fitly described to our very own national hero, which is Jose Rizal. He remains steadfast, unbothered. He is unbothered, but he remains steadfast despite of the threat he receives in his life. Wala siya nagpadaog-daog, di ba? Sa iyang unsa to yang katang yun sa niya pag-express ang iyang oppression against ketong sa mga Spanish government, di ba, through writing. And wala siya nahadlok because he loves his country. And that's what people educated do. Kaya nila barugan ang atoang nasod. Dili mabasta-basta, no? Kaya bisag pag unsa pa nang problema ang maabot, dili gina nila digid sila basta-basta mapadaog. So that's what it is in the stanza. So for the 8, his achievements on sapphires are engraved. The country pays him 1,000 honors. For in the noble breast of her sons, virtue transplanted luxuriant flows, and in the love of good they're disposed, will see the lords and governors. The noble people do loyal venture, Christian education always procure, no? Christian education always procure, and that's really true. So the achievements of an educated man are not forgotten, and he passes his wisdom on to the generations that come after him. He becomes a beacon to his family and sets a good example for the youth. In this stanza, Rizal also stresses the great importance of a Christian education, as opposed to one that lacks the spiritual aspect, which he obviously considers an essential cornerstone. So magunsa man na imong knowledge og wala po kay divine spirit, 'di ba? Magunsa man na kung bright ka pero wala kay pagtuo sa Ginoo. Wala kay divine spirit, dili healthy imong divine, imong paniniwala sa Ginoo. 'Di ba? Kanang I just wanna impart ha. Sa mong school is kanang sa Rosemont kay kanang nadyo kanang activity or nagi program nga magpundok ni and we worship God. Even, di ba, na po na sa mga school, even sa public, elementary, I remember, na mga catechism nga mga to sa school. Andig to, no, aside sa kanang mga information nga kanang makuha to sa school, napatay lesson nga madawat sa religion. Kaya they taught us kinsa ni sila mga saints, unsa ni sila, what are their contributions, o nga na unsa ni sila himo, what happened atong mga panahuna, and things like that. No? Kato sa mo ang kuan nga niyo, sa mo ang sa among previous school kay mag-worship no? Bisag unsa pa nimog pugo nga dili ka mohilak sa message sa spokesperson di jud malikayan. Kay kanang despite of how burden and heavy it is to go to school to achieve and to reach your goals, di mo malikayan nga kanang nagi mga trials nga moabot. So what's the purpose of education if you don't have the spiritual aspect? No, 'di ba? Nabatay ka ng Bible verse ana nga kanang ang ato ang knowledge nga acquire is gikan gid, and I do agree with that. Okay. So let's jump to the last stanza. And like the golden sun of the morn possess resplendent shedding gold, and like fair aurora of gold and red, she overspreads her colors bold. Such true education proudly gives the pleasure of virtue to young and old, and she enlightens out motherland dear, as she offer endless glow and luster. So the poem ends in a slush of color, as the author likens a good education to lights of the sun and the aurora. Great wisdom peaks and no favorites. Young and old benefit from it and delight in its choice. Rizal closes the verse with an image of his country, with the sun overhead, a sun that embodies the virtues and wonders of a good education, which he dreams for every citizen to enjoy. Ang kadaugan sa usa, kadaugan sa tanan. And that's what Rizal wanted to emphasize, that education is really important, and that the youth is the new hope, the new breed of the youth or the generation would give a hope to its country. Kita, mga kabatanunan, if we tend to acquire education, we became critical thinkers. We became rational of the things. We are not destroyed by just a single movement or oppression. We remain steadfast. No? Kining mga kabatanunan nga magali-rally sa dan about the government, it has a negative and positive impact. Positive because they have the knowledge, they have the body of knowledge, that's sila gipaglaban. Though it's negative impact, kay kanang na mga violence nga ma-involve, na mga ma-injured, na mga kanang kalihukan nga dili sa kanang makadaot nila physically. So ingana siya. Though sometimes nagagid siya na pros and cons, but nonetheless, let's just look forward and emphasize the positive impact. So mo na siya, no? That ends with the poem, "Through education, our motherland receives light." So I would like now, before we end our discussion, I would like to leave you a quote from Michelle Obama. Empower yourselves with a good education. Then get out there and use that education to build a country worthy of your boundless promise. Empower yourself. Start empowering yourselves. Start acquiring a good education, because when you have an education, you create ideas, you become creative, innovative, and use that intelligence, use that wisdom to have an impact to our country. In whatever aspect, it have a positive impact. Good, do good, and it will give back to you. Okay, so education in today's generation is really important. You know, okay, kita ang pag-asa ng bayan. Okay? So, start possessing knowledge, get up, and do something productive. So, this end my discussion. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have learned and tried to reflect of how important education in our today's generation. Makaanak ka nga, ay kay importante yun ang education. Kay mas nagka kung ano mas nagka high tech, mas nagkataas ang standards sa job requirement. And if you don't have an education, dili pug ka makasud, no? Do good and start building yourself already. So thank you for listening, and this is the end of my discussion. Have a good day, everyone, and goodbye. Thank you for listening.